The Nick Cattle Show, out, Everything Pats in, a New England Patriots podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, Spotify, Apple Pods. Don't forget to rate and review. All right, let's look at free agency. I'm going to lay out my plan, okay? I'm going to lay out my plan. I'm sure many of you will disagree with the plan. That is fine. It's fine. But I'm going to lay out the plan, and I'm going to give you names that I want the Patriots to sign on both sides of the football, okay? So let's start offensively. And let me start here. Not everybody that you want is going to sign with you. We all understand that. And so I'm trying to balance out the top names, the top desired guys, and some realistic goals, which is to say, my free agency plan will never give you 15 of the very tippity top names on the market because that is completely delusional, unrealistic. Free agency is not a fix-all. It all starts with the draft. We know that. The way that the Patriots will find sustained success is by drafting. Year in, year out, drafting well. That's what it's all about. But you can certainly get better, especially when your roster looks like the Patriots roster. You can certainly get better in this free agency. So here's my plan. Again, understanding that not everybody that you want to sign is going to sign. But here is my realistic, hopeful free agency plan. Offensively, left tackle, we all know who it's going to be. It's Ronnie Stanley. I'm going out. I'm dumping the bag on Ronnie Stanley. 3 years, $75 million contract, $25 million a year. Reportedly, Ravens are willing to go from like $20 to $23 million a year. I would go to $25 million a year to try to secure the player. I start with Ronnie Stanley, 3 years, $75 million. But I don't stop there at tackle. I'm then also going to sign Jedrick Wills. Now, Jedrick Wills is an interesting guy. He's still younger, a former top 10 pick, tons of potential, right? Athleticism. But he's been struggling in Cleveland. And that means his market is going to be lower. So I'm going to sign Jedrick Wills to a 1-year, $4 million contract. And Jedrick Wills is going to be my insurance for Ronnie Stanley if he gets hurt. If Stanley doesn't get hurt, Jedrick Wills is my plan at right tackle. And if Jedrick Wills loses the right tackle competition against, let's say, Caden Wallace, then Jedrick Wills is my swing tackle. So you've got a young guy on a 1-year deal, short money, who has the potential, former top 10 pick. I'm not asking him to be my starting left tackle. I would want him to be my right tackle. If I could have Wills on the right side, because he's played on the right side, played in college on the right side. He's played a number of times in Cleveland on the right side. If I could have Ronnie Stanley as my left tackle, Jedrick Wills as my right tackle, I would love that. So I'd go right after Stanley, priority number 1. Then I would sign Jedrick Wills for some insurance, and hopefully he starts on the right side. I'm not done with the offensive line. I want to address left guard. So I'm also going to go out, and I'm going to offer Tevin Jenkins a 3-year, $36 million contract. $12 million a year, probably more than what he's going to get offered elsewhere. I'm going out, and I'm dumping $12 million a year on Tevin Jenkins for the next 3 years. Tevin Jenkins was the 18th overall ranked guard from Pro Football Focus. He's 15th this past year in pass blocking. Ronnie Stanley, Tevin Jenkins on your left side is, I think, as good as you could ask for. The other thing I like about Jenkins is that he obviously would be coming from Chicago. Jason Hotaling, who's your assistant offensive line coach, who was the offensive line coach in Tennessee under Mike Vrabel, Hotaling was in Chicago last year as the assistant offensive lines coach. And, of course, Thomas Brown, who's your tight ends coach and passing game coordinator, he was also in Chicago last year. So you have 2 coaches on your staff that have direct knowledge, intel of who Jenkins is and what he can do. Jedrick Wills was in Cleveland last year. Of course, Mike Vrabel was in Cleveland last year, and Vrabel worked with the offensive line. So Jedrick Wills, Tevin Jenkins, both guys have connections to this coaching staff, which I think is important. So that's my big time moves there on the O-line, right? Ronnie Stanley, left tackle. Jedrick Wills, right tackle, 1-year deal, short money, prove it kind of contract. Tevin Jenkins, my left guard, 3 years, $36 million. I'm not done with the offensive line. I'm also going to sign Brady Christensen. Who? Brady Christensen. Interior offensive lineman, plays center. But here's the thing about Christensen. He can play all 5 offensive line positions. He's not going to cost you a lot of money. I'd give Christensen a 2-year, $5 million deal. And now I have a guy that can play all 5 positions. So in case there's some kind of urgency, there's multiple injuries, I'm dealing with a bunch of stuff, I've got to shuffle around like we saw last year, I have Christensen who I can plug in at center, at guard, or even at tackle if I need to. If the need is that dramatic, I have somebody in that spot that's not making a ton of money. So Brady Christensen is my last addition to the offensive line. Wide receiver. Now, I know people are going to be upset about this. But again, I'm being realistic. If I'm the Patriots, I'm trying to trade for my number 1 receiver, right? Like Metcalf, maybe Ayuk. Here's my receiver, Josh Palmer. We've heard a lot about Darius Slayton. We've heard a lot about Chris Godwin. I think Godwin is going to stay in Tampa. Slayton, I understand why people like Slayton. There's the connection with Ryan Cowden from New York. I get it. But I think Joshua Palmer is getting overlooked. I think he's sneaky good. And I'm giving him a 3-year, $18 million deal. I pay him $6 million a year, give him a 3-year contract. He's 26 years old in September. And there's a couple of things that I really like about Palmer. Number one, he has versatility. He can play inside. He can play outside. He has played both the X receiver and the Z receiver for the Chargers. So Palmer's that kind of guy that can move around. I think Josh McDaniels would be able to do great things with him. He can play inside. He can play outside. The other thing about Joshua Palmer is he creates separation. He'd be one of the wide receivers in this free agency class that actually creates separation, which is something your wide receiver room has struggled with. So I'm signing Joshua Palmer. I'm bringing him into the wide receiver room. I'm working on a wide receiver 1 trade again for maybe DK Metcalf, maybe Brendan Ayuk. Maybe I'm looking at T. Higgins if he and Cincy don't come to an agreement. The wide receiver 1 question is going to be something that I'm going to try to address via trade, or maybe I get lucky in the draft. I'm just trying to build my wide receiver core, and Joshua Palmer to me would be arguably your best receiver in the room if you signed him. So Joshua Palmer is the wide receiver I'm signing. Tight end. You need a tight end. I'm re-signing Austin Hooper. 1 year, $4 million. Not a huge deal. Austin Hooper had a good year last year with Drake Maye. He has connection with Maye, right? He built that chemistry. You're not going to have to pay him a ton of money. You're not going to pay him for a number of years. Austin Hooper also played on a Mike Vrabel team down in Tennessee. So Vrabel has a history with Austin Hooper. Hooper understands what to expect from Mike Vrabel. So I'm keeping Austin Hooper here for 1 more year. Running back. I want some running back insurance, but I don't want to pay a ton of money for it. I'm going to go out and sign Kenneth Gainwell. I think he's sneaky pretty good. He has not gotten a ton of opportunity in Philadelphia. I think it's because obviously this past year they had Saquon Barkley. They run Jalen Hurts an awful lot. I would bring in Kenneth Gainwell because I think Gainwell is somebody who can compete with Antonio Gibson. It'll cost you like $3 million. It's a short contract, 1-year deal, $3 million. Gainwell brings some explosiveness out of the backfield. He can receive a little bit. So I'm bringing in Kenneth Gainwell for some insurance. I'm also bringing in a quarterback for insurance, and I want a quarterback who can compete with Joe Milton, but not compete with Drake Maye. I'm bringing in old friend Jarrett Stidham. 1 year, $3 million deal. He's my QB3. Get that competition. Stidham obviously played under Josh McDaniels, knows the offense, can run an offense. Again, this is for QB3, emergency, compete with Joe Milton. I'm bringing in Stidham. Stidham has some athleticism, like Drake Maye has some athleticism. I think that, he would make a lot of sense. You need a kicker, go out and get a kicker. All right. So here's my offense heading into the draft. And I'll get to defense in a minute. But here's my offense heading into the draft if all those signings happen. At quarterback, Drake Maye, Joe Milton, Jarrett Stidham. At running back, Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson, Kenneth Gainwell. Wide receiver, you've got Kendrick Bourne, Joshua Palmer, Pop Douglas, Kayshon Boutte, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, and of course, again, I'm trying hard to acquire a wide receiver one. Tight end, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, Jaheim Bell, Jake Westover. Here's your offensive tackle depth. Ronnie Stanley, Jedrick Wills, Caden Wallace, Verdarian Lowe, DeMontre Jacobs. You also have Jones and Christensen. Your offensive guards, Mike Owenu, Tevin Jenkins, Cole Strange, Sidney So, Layden Robinson. And again, you would have Brady Christensen. And at center, you have David Andrews, Ben Brown, again, Christensen, who plays center, and Jake Andrews. So that's what you have heading into the draft. That's what you have heading into the draft. I think that gives you a competitive team. I think that gives you a better team. And I that absolutely opens up opportunities during the draft to get the best player available.